I have a question for you. Do you ever get the feeling you are cheating when doing something creative? You take a shortcut, use already made assets, cut corners to save time, and make a difficult process easier. Does this bring a feeling of guilt bubbling to the surface? No? Is it just me? Well, let us start with some definitions of cheating. Merriam-Webster defines cheating as depriving of something valuable by the use of deceit or fraud. Cambridge Dictionary defines cheating as behaving in a dishonest way in order to get what you want. And if we want good old Google to provide us with a definition, we get to act dishonestly or unfairly in order to gain an advantage or to avoid something undesirable by luck or skill. So how does this help us? If we cast our minds back to the last Black Friday we had, I found myself perusing Blender Marketplace and various websites for add-ons and software that looked interesting, things that were sparking my creative ideas and would aid me in future Blender projects. I settled on True Terrain 5 with True Sky Bundle, Simply Cloth Pro, both from Blender Marketplace, and Quad Remesher from Exoside's website. I'll be doing a dedicated video on each of these soon, but the basic description for each is that I would be able to create landscapes and environments easily, clothing for characters, and retopologize models faster. So what is the issue, I hear you ask? Well, let's take retopology and the add-on Quad Remesher. Retopology is the process of simplifying a 3D model's mesh from high poly to low poly. Take this boggle sculpt I made for a project I'm currently working on. If we go into edit mode, you can see that it has many millions of polygons or faces, and so we can refer to this as having a high poly count. This gives us the ability to add more detail to the surface, as deforming these polygon shapes looks awful when the polygons are huge, and larger polygons means fewer overall, and so a low poly count. Still with me? So why would I need a low poly version of this model? Low poly models are much easier to animate, as your computer is likely to burst into flames if you attempt to take the dense poly mesh and move it. So avoiding the spontaneous combustion of your device, we turn to retopology, or as many call it, hell. Joking aside, retopology is the process whereby we model over our sculpt, building larger polygon shapes, which will eventually result in a naturally lower poly version. This can be very time consuming and tricky to get right, especially for a beginner like me. And so in steps Quad Remesher. One click of a button and a short loading time later, you have your fairly decent low poly model. I say fairly decent as there will be areas where the uniform application of polygons is not as good as manual work, such as in the hands of this model I made. However, for the most part, you get a complete low poly model for a singular button click. Hours of work reduced to a few seconds. Tempting, right? So why do I feel guilty using this? In most cases it produces exactly what I would do, but it takes significantly less time to do so. It isn't super expensive, and I got it on sale. What are we missing? Well, let us look at those earlier definitions of cheating again. To deprive of something valuable by use of deceit or fraud. If we replace the deceit with software, then this begins to make sense. The valuable part that you are depriving yourself of is the skill of retopology and what this means for animation. If you go straight to using the add-on, you'll miss out on this learning. Remember, the low poly models are essential for animation. Retopology is reducing the poly count, but it is also knowing where you need more polygons on a model for animation purposes, as my beginner understanding goes. There's a great video by Decoded discussing what good topology is. I recommend you go check out their video for more in-depth explanations by someone who knows what they're doing. Quad Remesher is great, but it applies the low poly count uniformly across the entire model and can sometimes poorly map sections because of this. In these cases, you would have to go in and edit these areas you require, and so you'd need these skills that you have deprived yourself of if you simply took this shortcut to save time. This is the root of the guilt, knowing that you are avoiding learning an essential skill to your goals. So how do we combat this? And is it even worth getting the software if you have to learn how to do it anyway, and potentially have to adjust the results of the software shortcut? Simple answer, learn to do retopology. Yes, it is going to take time, yes, it can be frustrating, but this is an investment to future you and your time and skills. Given this advice, I would also recommend getting the software after you have at least learned the basics of retopology. You will then have developed the skills to adjust any part of the model you require, saving time from doing the retopology on areas that generally comes out similar, whether it's quad remesher or done manually, and most importantly, you won't feel guilty for skipping any steps, plus you'll appreciate the software more. It is all a balancing act when it comes to using software that makes processes easier, balance between saving time whilst not replacing essential learning. It is also important to know what it is you wish to accomplish in the software you are using. In my case, I'm using Blender with the hopes of creating my own original animated content and characters. It is therefore crucial that I not skip any key learning along the way for easier access to later stages of my journey. This is a long road I am taking and a lofty goal I have set myself, so avoiding backtracking to learn what I ignored along the way is vital. However, defining my goals means that using assets for typical items that will populate my worlds and generating terrains for scenes using software are things I am happy to explore. So, define your goals clearly, learn the fundamentals that help you achieve those goals, and be open to using any helpful software for those parts that sit outside your immediate interests. This way you can avoid any of those guilty, cheating feelings, and avoid any pitfalls in your own journey. Let me know if you have any similar feelings when making stuff, and maybe even how you have tackled this. And as always, I hope you have a great, guilt-free, creative day.